Welcome, everybody. We're going to get right into it.
The contents of a cell phone assigned to the state trooper investigating Karen Reed could end up being a bombshell in other cases. Today, the Norfolk DA announced it's received the phone data and could now affect two other high-profile cases. WBZ's Brandon Truitt joins us live in studio tonight with the new court filings and what it means. Brandon.
Well, Courtney, Trooper Michael Proctor is currently suspended without pay pending an internal affairs investigation into his conduct. Now, as a result of that, state police went through Proctor's work phone and turned over what they found to the Norfolk District Attorney.
He's a whack job. See.
Objection.
Yeah, she's a babe. Weird Fall River accent, though. Said the Alberts beat the shit out of O'Keefe, left him for dead, and that's why her taillight was cracked. She's gross.
It was that June 10th court appearance where Trooper Michael Proctor read his own text messages, the vulgar, disparaging texts to other troopers and friends about Karen Reed.
The rest of the unprofessional and regrettable comments are something I'm not proud of, and I shouldn't have wrote in a private or any type of setting.
Those messages resulted in Proctor's suspension from the force and started an internal affairs investigation that led to an extraction of messages from his work phone. In their court filings Friday, prosecutors say after an initial review, Proctor's phone is expected to have information about open investigations, surveillance video from unrelated investigations, and more. Prosecutors ultimately filed court paperwork in three high-profile murder cases: Karen Reed's, Brian Walsh's, and Ingolf Turk's. Prosecutors know they will have to hand over information from Proctor's phone in those two cases, but worry releasing all of its data could jeopardize other open cases, which in their words would be contrary to the interests of justice.
So I spoke with attorney Kevin Reddington over the phone. He represents Ingolf Turk. Now, Reddington tells me that he has filed to get a hold of more than 3,000 pages of exculpatory evidence. That's evidence that could benefit his client. It's still unclear what, if anything, is on that phone and how it could ultimately impact these cases. Courtney.
So for those of you that are new, we usually open up our Zoom meetings with some type of audio or visual that is relevant to today's topic. Welcome, my name is Jacqueline Fonseca. I'm the co-executive director of the Harriet Tubman Project. And we have Alafu Kwan. Introduce yourself.
So I just want to appreciate everyone in attendance. Principal founder Harriet Tubman Project started in 2021, overseeing 411 Harriet Tubman projects on the inside. Now I'm on the outside, doing my best to elevate the advocacy work. So yeah, I'm just here to pay it forward. We got a credible session this evening. Yeah, let's get it.
For those of you that have loved ones calling in from behind the wall, as always, please unmute yourself because time is limited and we want to just have anyone call in to introduce themselves. There's a few new people on here today.
Yeah, hey everyone, this is JJ. I just wanted to join in real quick, to say hi to everyone and, just give you guys props to what you're doing out there, especially you, Jacqueline. I know you've been putting in the work, even before then, too.
It's a little low, JJ. You're a little far away. So that's JJ. Fu, you want to just tell people a little bit about who Jonathan is?
So Jonathan was a brother that came in, always in the law library, even at night, which is rare. Like when you're there in the morning and afternoon, usually take the night off, deal with some business, but he was there all three shifts, which stood out. Someone put him on to the Harriet Tubman project that we was doing. He came, he sat, he observed, he was attentive, and in no time he was up there facilitating courses, generally around areas of the ethical responsibility of attorneys, attorney-client relationships. We had skits going on where someone played the lawyer, someone played the client. JJ was the facilitator behind that. Incredible, brilliant mind. He came in, coming to the system, trying to mind his business, trying to get home. And then he ultimately played a part in facilitating at least a portion of our Tuesday session. So appreciate JJ. There's no information that he hoards, and it's great to hear from him, even if it's muffled.
Thank you. Anyone else calling from behind the wall want to introduce themselves?
Hey, good evening, everybody. This is Marilyn and Ray. How are you?
Good. Is this Ray Cologne?
Yes, it is Ray Cologne.
Hey, welcome,
Ray
Ray.
Cologne. Okay, Ray Cologne.
He's actually on the phone as well.
Hey,
Peace. Ray Cologne.
all right, get off that.
Go ahead, Ray, introduce yourself. This is one of our co-facilitators from behind the wall doing his thing. Very proud of him.
Hey, yeah, Ray, you know, real fortunate. I got the NCI Norfolk back in 2022. Brought me into the cipher, allowed me the space. I co-facilitated with him for some time before I went back to school, and it's a beautiful thing, you know. We didn't have anything yesterday. There was no power in the facility, but we had our 2 meetings last week, before 13 and 414. Went off without a hitch.
Thank you, Ray. So to give some context, 413 and 414, that's the 413th and 414th Harriet Tubman project class that the guys have facilitated behind the wall. So like we said before, even though food's home, it doesn't stop. There's still a lot more people to come home, and these brothers are working hard. So thank you for all that you do, Ray.
Hey.
Peace. All right. So we're gonna get right into it. We started off with a video about Proctor.
When you guys look at that Proctor report, like what's the first thing that come up for you? Like what are some of the things that as you're trying to fight a loved one's case, like how do you make that relatable to your loved one's situation, or are you having difficulty kind of connecting the dots between what the news is reporting and, you know, trying to help your loved one get home? We just want to see what organically comes up for you.
Fu, do you want to summarize what that was? I know it was a lot of information.
Yeah, so what happened was in Karen Reed's case, there was an officer that made disparaging remarks about Karen Reed. And you may not think that that's a big deal because it's not relative to the evidence, but it is relative to bias. And if an officer had any bias or any prejudice or any inclination to lie about a defendant, that's considered exculpatory evidence or valuable evidence, right? Because it goes to the character of the witness that the jury begins to factor in the credibility of said witness, which is the greatest level of impeachment evidence. So there's been new tapes that came out regarding evidence of bias regarding said officer. And as a result of that, other attorneys who have clients who were subject to an investigation of prior investigations of Proctor are now asking for that discovery because it may allow them to explore if there was a level of bias or motivation to lie in other cases to show a pattern in practice. So it's a big deal. He formally withdrew his appeal and he doesn't desire to become a police officer again because if he continues on with his appeal, more evidence that is prejudicial will be disclosed, which creates a strong likelihood that other defendants that had him on their particular case will be released. So that's why it's a big deal.
Any additional thoughts on that?
I'm sick and tired of hearing about Karen Reed. Sick and tired. But I'm glad that they're now paying attention to all the corrupt BS that's been going on for years and years and years and years. But I'm tired of hearing about Karen Reed because so many of our people are locked up and going through it and nobody's talking about that. But I've been hearing about Karen Reed for like a year or more. Sick of it. But I'm glad they're getting Proctor's ass.
Exactly. And you know, this is how we leverage that whole Karen Reed situation. If they are really keeping that Proctor accountable for what he's doing, think of how many cases he's involved with and how many cases can now have the same opportunity that Karen Reed has had because of this corrupt cop. So when we think about someone like Proctor, we got to think about an Annie Dukin or Sonia Farrak, the lab chemist back in, I think, 2017 or 2016, that those lab chemists mess with so many drug samples that everyone associated with them got to come home. They got an opportunity to overturn their conviction. So it's the same thing with Proctor. So I can't stand to continue to hear about this woman either. But there's a lot that we can leverage off of that situation. Thank you, Naya.
Obviously, he's not the only state trooper or police who does that. And I just wonder, how can we use that method to help whoever we're helping, like, get something out there, or help their case. I'm sure it's way more widespread. I bet my life on it. But that's just one case that one officer was involved in, and whatever those other few cases that he's involved with. What about all the other lies that have been told in court or between each other or whatever?
Right. Exactly. Exactly. And that's exactly what leads us into today's topic. What is the blueprint for a defendant to come home? So, who are the parties involved in prosecuting your case, your loved one's case? Let's think about the detectives, the police officers, the investigators, the medical experts, the victim witness advocates, the prosecutors. There's so many people involved in prosecuting your loved one. We have to get familiar with who they are. Who are they professionally and who are they personally? This is exactly the example of once you get to know who these people are and what they're involved with, there's an opportunity where more exculpatory evidence, which is evidence that is helpful for a defendant, can be brought into court. So on that note, I'm going to turn it over to Fu. You promised us a HTP class like you do it behind the wall. I've been waiting to see this.
Peace. So when you think about who are the parties involved in prosecuting your case, so when we first study our case, and someone always say, you know what, I'm fighting my case or I'm studying my case, well, oftentimes just looking at transcripts, right? But if you're someone that is really engulfed in your case, you know the detectives' names, you know the police officers involved, you know the investigators involved. All of these are separate areas, right? Then you got medical experts, forensics experts, eyewitnesses, prosecutors, victims witness advocate. You should know the names of all of these parties in your case. It's just not knowing whether one jury wasn't selected because of age or of race or ethnicity. Those are huge, right? But you also want to know the parties that were involved throughout your investigation. Because if you don't, you may miss an opportunity to elevate your claim when an issue such as Proctor comes into fruition. So let me give you an example. If you're someone that had detectives that were ultimately found to be corrupt, that would be considered exculpatory because Deshaun Ellis' case was an indication of that, and he had got that overturned where there was detectives involved that had a conflict of interest with the victim in addition to investigating his case. And when that was exposed, that in addition to other things, his case was overturned. Corrupt police officers, Detective Keeler, right? A police officer that's known in Suffolk County. There's a few cases that got overturned because of interference in cases, or he didn't provide exculpatory evidence, somewhat similar to the Sean Jenkins case that got overturned because he gave a witness $100 before they went to the grand jury. Evidence that was never conveyed to the jury when he went to trial, right? That was new information with police officers, investigators. Investigators are not just officers. Those are people that are hired by the team of the prosecutor to kind of unearth evidence. So for me, I had investigators go out and interview witnesses, and those investigators turned up exculpatory evidence, right? That they ultimately was mandated to turn it over, which played a key role with me being released. Medical experts, forensics experts. You have people that handle drugs. That's what was said with Andy Ducon. The prosecutor didn't do anything, but the person that handled the drugs was inept, and they was utilizing unethical practices. And the Andy Dukin case reversed over 35,000 cases. Let me say it again. Just two individuals that had a role in testing evidence played a role in getting 35,000 cases vacated, right? Even though the prosecutor didn't know anything about what was going on, anyone under the prosecutor is considered equal to the prosecution. Then you have eyewitnesses. Like this faulty eyewitness testimony, you see the Raymond Gaines case. We was in court last week where on Thursday, he was dismissed. And it was based primarily on faulty eyewitness identification. So if you have an eyewitness in your case and it's found that they had faulty memory, they may have been induced by drugs and alcohol, they may have been in psychiatric care and no one knew. Steve Pena, who's currently fighting his case, he uncovered that there was a witness that was being held in a psychiatric ward during his trial, and he didn't know about it, right? So 28 years later, he was given exculpatory evidence that ultimately led to his being free, and he's currently actively trying to get it dismissed from the DA's office. Prosecutors, we just seen the case of Mrs. Choi, where the prosecutors was utilizing discriminatory emails about our Asian brothers and sisters, and they was uncovered for the first time. Why is that important? As with Proctor, it shows a level of bias and ethnic bias, which can lead to malicious prosecution or a prosecution that was rooted in an animus or retaliation based on a dislike for the defendant. Victim's witness advocate, which is something that oftentimes go unnoticed. We had asked for the victim's witness advocate notes, and it was reluctantly denied, but then we asked the judge to see if there was anything of merit in it, and there was ultimately exculpatory evidence disclosed, right? But this isn't an area we really don't think about. We just think about the ADA that is trying our case, but we're not really researching all the other parties. Because if you tell me a role of anyone playing a part in your case, I can tell you a case that someone actually got reversed based on the negligence of that particular party that played involved in prosecuting your case. So when you researching your case, you want to keep, anytime there's a witness, anytime there's an expert, anytime there's a prosecutor, anytime there's a police officer that is in the news and they're from the county that your loved one is in, their first instinct is to go back in their transcripts to see if that person was in their case. Because if there's new evidence that is Brady related, Brady means that there's now been uncovered evidence that is favorable to you and would have made a meaningful impact to your defense, right? That was never disclosed. But when you look at all of these reports coming out, even though it's Karen Reed, even though it's Sean Ellis, even though it's other cases, and you want your loved one's case to be magnified, if you did have those officers, whatever came out in their cases can be included in yours, right? So that's why it's very important and very critical that we really invest on what's transpiring or going on with these witnesses, what's going on with these experts, what's going on in these prosecutors after our case, to see if other cases are getting reversed because of them, and we can use that evidence in our case to move forward. So that's just a general background of it, but it's very important that we know all the parties that have a role and played a hand in our case, because when we're negligent of them, we may miss the boat of trying to identify how their pattern and practices have ultimately created a wrongful conviction. Peace.
Thank you, Fu. So as loved ones, check out the Facebook pages, the Instagram pages. If someone's saying something racist or biased, that's exculpatory evidence. So these people have personal lives and they have professional lives in which they show their true colors, they show their corruption. So you have access to the internet, your loved one behind the wall does not. So you may be able to do some research and help your loved one. And Fuquan dropped a lot of names, a lot of cases. So when you hear of a case being overturned, look at that case and see who's involved in that case, what officers, what medical examiners are involved in the case that got overturned, and see if they're in your loved one's case as well. What is the Harriet mentality? So Fu, you said in order for someone to come home, they have to have the mentality of Harriet Tubman. Can you break that down?
So let me make an amendment to that. So there's a lot of people that come home that don't do no legal work. They just got incredible lawyers. They benefit off having incredible resources, and they're home, right? They didn't even know how they got home, but they're home. As long as there was an inequity exposed, it shows that their trial was unconstitutional, they're home. But there's another category of people. Those that don't have any resources, they don't come from money, they don't have the best attorneys, they don't have the right ethnicity, they don't have the right background or the right past. What do you do then? Because your odds decrease if you don't have the resources to meet the state dollar for dollar to convict you. That means you have to be a Harriet. You have to be somebody that is creative, that is unique, someone that is resilient. You have to be a leader. You have to be fearless. You have to be adaptable. Why are those qualities essential in order to be released? Let me explain it to you. So let me start with a leader. When you're in prison, you're in an environment where so many different personalities, so many different subcultures are infused as one identity called an inmate or a convict, right? And not everybody adheres to it, but a strong percentage of the population does. So you got to be a leader. If you're trying to get home, you can't be sucked into the environment, right? Because if you get sucked into the environment, and if you're in a hole and you really can't use, now they got tablets, which helps, but you're not around some of the legal minds that can help you bring some perspective around some of the legal decisions. You have to be a leader. You got to be somebody that's not willing to gravitate to what's going on in your environment, regardless of how much is pulling you, out of your space, right? I've seen so many individuals that want to get their case together, but they got so swept into what their crew or their gang or, just people around them that wasn't sensitive to their freedom kind of pull them in. Then you got resilient. There's going to be denials. I had 2 Rule 30s denied and a direct appeal denied and a federal brief denied. And after all of that, some people quit. Some people start using drugs, right? But you got to be resilient. You got to have a mindset to identify what lessons were extracted from those losses and be able to deal with the next opportunity with a greater grace and a greater literacy. But you got to be resilient. You got to be fearless. Now, a lot of people assume that guys that did a lot of crime in the street or guys that grew up in tough neighborhoods are fearless. But I know some of the toughest dudes that are scared to bring issues to their lawyer. I know some of the most strongest personalities have a fear of addressing their attorneys without the intentions of being ostracized, right? You got to be fearless. If you see something in your case that you keep everyone up at night, but you're reluctant to give it to the attorney, that's not good, right? You have to be fearless. You have to get past your anxieties. You got to get past your doubts. You have to get past the shortcomings that you identify within in order to help elevate your issue into the court, right? Adaptable. There's new laws that come up all the time. How do we transfer new laws? The Proctor information just came out. How is that relatable to us? This is a fluid process. Laws changing every day. If you look at the SJC or the Mass Appeal records, there's cases heard before them and decided every day. Are you adaptable to them? Are you incorporating that new language into your case? You have to have the ability to be adaptable. You got to be resourceful. Guys are in prison. There's not a lot of resources. You have to use everything in your power to engineer your outcome. Even if you're on the phone and you're having your loved one set up a Facebook or Instagram for you, you have to use that time to really invest in your freedom. If they have the time to help you with a web page, you got to use every living opportunity you have to get home. Unapologetic. There's people that when you are working on your case, you may be kind of unremoved. You may be removed from your peers in the prison setting. And they may be like, yo, you always on your case. You ain't never gonna, you got to be very unapologetic about your path. You got to be someone that's firm. You got to be someone that's resolute in your case. And even when attorneys try to talk you down from your issues, you got to be very unapologetic about your issues, because if they're rooted in knowledge or information, then you should go in every room standing on that, right? And last, obligation. Even if you don't have an obligation to yourself, right? Low self-esteem, you may have felt like you wasn't anybody at any period of your life outside of the drug game or the streets. You got to have an obligation to someone bigger than you if you feel that way about yourself, whether it's your children, whether it's your little sister who get tired of crying when they come and seeing you, whether it's your mom who's getting up there in age. There got to be something that you hang on to that transcends the peer group that is not really encouraging us nor inspiring us to get out. And at times we kind of normalize the prison environment and we find our little pocket in prison. As long as they're not messing with us, we're good. But in our reality, our family are crying for us. Our girls are going through it, trying to see us sad when they get denied. Like, there got to be something that provokes that ambition to rise above the prison environment. Because as it says here, the estimates of people wrongfully convicted in the United States range from 1% to over 15%. But those numbers don't get redressed. The cases that actually get reversed is within a space of 5% to 7%. Are you one of them? Are you one of those guys who go above and beyond to make sure you're going to be one of the 7% of 100 cases? Out of 100 cases, there's only 7 that really get reversed. Are you one of those 7? So when you think about the mindset that you need to have, you need to be different if you expect the outcome in your case to be different from any other person that's being heard in front of the courts. And I know it can come off as if one doesn't have the issues and it can be attributed solely to the mind. No, what I'm saying is, even if you have the issues, you have to bring it home. You have to close it. You got to make sure attorney is on point. That's why it's a Harriet mentality. Harriet was dealing with slavery. Like, she understood her environment. So she understood that it's not something or a process that she can just go at lightly. She had to go at unapologetically, right? And she risked her life and a life of others to make sure that they were successful in their undertaking. So when you look at the passion of Harriet and how she went at slavery, we have to have the mindset of going at our freedom that way. How is the way you're going about your freedom unique? When people see you in the yard, when people see you in the jail, do they look at you and say, nah, he's definitely getting out? Because in all reality, that's how Harriet was seen. They knew she was different. They knew she was motivated. But at the core, they knew that she had a plan that she was deliberate in executing. If you're someone with no resources and you're trying to figure out a way, it all starts with the mind and just making sure you got a Harriet mindset. Peace.
Thank you, Fu. And I want y'all to think about anything that isn't on this list of who you have to be and who Harriet was to get herself free. When do you think you should be investing in the Harriet mentality?
I feel like you should always have this kind of mentality in life, period.
Right. Especially when you're looking at a case, you're fighting for your life, or you've already been convicted. It's not time to get comfortable in prison. And like Fu said, some people let the environment suck them in and they're focused on basketball and, all different types of things that can distract you, gambling in prison, and just staying focused, staying disciplined, and not getting comfortable. Our goal is not to help people get comfortable in prison, it's to get them out of prison. So you should always be in your Harriet bag. Where should people be spending their time in prison?
So as we know, like, prison isn't a comfortable place, right? There's not really any spaces that assist in our elevation. Because think about it. The prison environment is a healthy economy for those who earn a living within it. So what incentive do they have for you to get out, right? So if you know that, and you know that they're not really creating any incentives for you to get home, what part of the jail can you use and weaponize with the intentions of you getting out, right? So where in the prison should you invest your time in prison? Because there are places you can use in prison to help you elevate out of prison. First place is always the library. Even though there's tablets today, and I'm someone that uses a tablet when I was incarcerated physically at least 10 hours a day. And I'm being honest with you. That's a fair assessment. But every day I went to the library because in the library, guys are talking about law. It's like a community of people that are trying to get home, right? And you want to be around that energy because in the library, you're getting a lawyer's weekly. You may have heard about a new case. Someone just may have flipped their case. You want to be in an environment where law is being discussed. Secondly, you want to use like a Harriet Tubman, like an AACC. You want to use a Latino cultural or Asian committee, which is now a PICA. You want to use the groups that are talking about freedom, use that platform to kind of explore ways that we can advocate more effectively around our freedom. And if you don't see it, like a Lifers group, then ask them, can you create a subcommittee where you can identify ways to upend a bill or ways to upend the policy, right? And there are spaces that help encourage that and help empower that. So what I would say is, you know, you want to work out, you want to train. I do it every day when I was in prison, right? But you don't want that to take the meat of the day. You take care of your body, you take care of your mind, but you want to look at places that you can be in prison, even if it's just dealing with peers outside of every building, just being in the yard, making sure you're advocating about freedom, you're speaking about freedom, and you're finding creative ways to get home. But there are a few spaces within prison, and if you don't see the space, then create one, because that's exactly what we did with the Harriet Tubman Project in MCI Norfolk.
Thank you, Fu. Does anyone want to add on to that? What is your loved one doing that is helpful in where they're spending their time? I know me and Fu spent a lot of time on that phone.
Yeah, Jack, if I could.
Peace, brother.
Peace, peace, peace. So there's a few things. One, I think what needs to happen too is accountability. One, I think it starts on the individual level first. So like someone that's like, you know, like myself, I had to hold myself accountable and be responsible on my part, right? Before I allow anybody else to assist me, because how can I allow someone else to assist me if I'm not assisting myself? So first I had to take account of my own negligence and my own shortcomings and try to like work on them. And then when I was like searching out for that assistance and that help, then other people, what I've came to realize is that they're seeing my growth and my own development, that they want to assist me, right? So it wasn't like they were doing the brunt work. I was carrying my own weight and assisting them as much as possible, if not probably carrying the bulk of it. That's one. And then also, I think, alluding to like what Fu said, like again, wherever you're at, that should be a space of like the Harriet Tubman mentality. You carrying that, whether you're in the law library, your cell, these cultural groups, and the yard. But also, it also depends on like your cipher, your space, who you are amongst. And I think, you know, granted, like we are trying to do outreach at the same time when we're inside, but then again, like we have a duty, right? I think when we go back to that Sada Shakur chant, and we think about we have a duty to ourselves, and we have to hold one accountable. If the people that we're around are not holding themselves accountable and kind of just whether they're consciously or unconsciously trying to pull us all together down, we kind of have to realize that, like I said, accountable, and then try to be like, all right, yo, hold on, this is not best for me, but also my community, my loved ones, my family, and this is not going to help me get out, you know. And it's kind of going back to like what Harriet Tubman said too, right? Like I would have freed more people if they only knew if they were slaves. So again, realizing that, and also the last thing I would say, the last point, just to supplement, is that like for those that are not like system impacted, don't know nobody system impacted, I think essentially like you can still be a Harriet Tubman, right? You can still have this mentality, right? You just have to have this mentality in order you want to see change. You want to see equitable rights, equal rights for everybody, but also like you want to see like things to be changed and manifest itself, and not allowing things to just go like unquestioned, unanswered, and not doing anything about it. And I think essentially when I'm in spaces where people are asking me questions specifically like that, like, oh, I don't know nobody that was locked up, or I don't know, I personally wasn't affected by this, especially when we're talking about bills. And I always look at them like, great, because you're the right people that we need, right? Because you don't benefit from this. Your rep or your senator is going to be quick to listen to you more than they're going to listen to me because of the fact that they know that I benefit from such a bill. Yeah, I just wanted to share that.
Thank you,
Peace,
Hamza.
brother.
Peace.
Thank you. And Hamza's, you know, he did time. He's home now. He's doing incredible. He's one of our HTP alumni. Naya said, for those that have been incarcerated, what could someone have told you at 15 that would have changed your outcome? Or what did you need to hear that you didn't?
Maybe if they would told me to stay in school, follow my dreams, that the streets was a lie, I probably would have had a different result and outcome in my future. You know, but I bought into the whole street drug culture head first. It was probably one of the most worst decisions I made that led me here. Yeah, I would say that. If someone
Thank you.
had told me to stick in school, keep my head in the books, follow my dreams, I was,
Thank
it
you,
probably would
Sean.
have been a lot different for me. Peace.
Peace. And I think your answer resonates with what Hamza said before. Like, who are you keeping around you? Sean has a joint venture case. And a lot of brothers that have joint venture cases, they're doing time for someone else's crime. So it's really who are you keeping around? And what Sharice dropped in there is a father or a male role model saying that they love you. So a lot of people just need to hear that they're loved. So us, we probably have a kid around us, a young adult around us that hasn't heard, I love you. And they're chasing that love in the streets. They're chasing it from their friends. And whether they're the principal or not, joint venture gets many young men and women doing life. And a lot of our brothers are being liberated, but there's a lot more just because of the company that they kept. Anything you want to add to that?
Just to answer that question real quick, it's funny because they just asked me something like that not too long ago, and I had to be completely honest that like at 15 years old, I was already like setting my ways. So I have to be honest when someone asked me that question, I don't think there was nothing in particular someone could have said to like make me change my views because at 15 years old, I already thought I was a man. I already thought like I had figured things out, and I know I didn't. I was a kid, but mentally, like I really thought that because by the age of 10, I was already seeing a lot more than I ever thought I was even possible. Or any child should ever see, right? So yeah, so I think essentially with this question, I would have to respond in a way that it has to start way before 15 years old. Like you have to start thinking about like when they're literally like 5, 6, 7 years old. From when they come from the womb, you start educating them and being around them and showing that love and show them that they matter, that they are important. But not at 15. At 15 years old, like I said, I was already determined. Nobody could tell me anything. I thought I was gonna be the one to change it.
Thank you, Hamza, for that perspective. That's true. It
Wow,
starts.
and that's scary. That's the thing that makes me very, very nervous because we tried. And now he's doing a bid for some adults. And we don't even know what to do. And it's like I was telling him, I've been telling him for years. When you go to jail, you go by yourself. You don't go with anybody else. Whoever you're out there on the street with, they don't go with you. Nobody's sending you money. Nobody's answering your phone calls. Nobody's coming up there to visit you. And I'm just afraid that he's gonna come out and he's gonna think that it's not good. It's gonna be like a complete like 360 and not a 180. He's just gonna come out and think that he's even iller because he just did it big. And that's why I'm so afraid. And that's why I asked the question. And thank you, Kings.
Also, I'm just real quick. If sure the sister that just was just speaking, I go into DYS typically 2 to 3 times a week, and I'm not sure if your son is there or whatnot. But if you want, I could probably like relay a message to him or something like that.
Really appreciate that. I would really, really appreciate that. If we could get in touch, I can get you his information.
So Brady is an issue where a defendant uncovers evidence that the prosecutor never gave them, thus the jury never heard, and they uncovered it years, months, and days after their conviction. But there's 3 prongs that one needs in order to solidify a Brady claim. They need to show first that evidence was in the possession of the Commonwealth and they knew about it. That can be shown through records, that can be shown through account, that can be shown through their own testimony, right? That's 1 prong. The second prong is you got to show that the evidence is material. You got to show that it is something that an attorney would have used, right? If they was given that evidence at your trial. You normally do that by having an attorney that you had at trial write an affidavit to say, if I had that, this is what I would have done, right? But that's check 2. Check 3 is the hardest part, which is prejudice. You have to show that whatever is new, whatever is newly discovered is considered strong enough that it prejudiced your due process, meaning it underlined, no, it compromised an underlining defense that you presented to the jury, right? And if you would have had this evidence, it would have completely shifted how you presented your case to the jury. So, like Jonas had an argument where he fit one materiality, he fit two they acknowledged that it was in the possession of the Commonwealth, but he couldn't pass the prejudice threshold in the state court. That's why they denied it. Not that they didn't say it was flawed, but they said he fit two of the three. And when you get a Brady claim, you got to meet all three claims. So you want to make sure that you have each element, each area, materiality, possession, and prejudice all solidified. And you would love to have an attorney that tried the case give you an affidavit to help you elevate through those three prongs. But that's generally what a Brady violation is. So Strickland versus Washington, which is the highest court of the United States, came up with a case called Strickland versus Washington, and it's based on ineffective assistance of counsel, where your counsel work was so inept, you was constitutionally deficient of counsel, right? So any ineffective assistance claim you have where you're saying your lawyer sold you out, he did this, this, and that, was compromised your defense, it's called a Strickland issue. But it's a violation of the Sixth Amendment, which is a right to counsel, right? But it's firm. Sometimes when judges present issues, they say it's not really a Brady claim because your attorney could have discovered that. If you found it now, that means your attorney could have been diligent at trial and found it the same way these other attorneys that you have now found it, right? And that's when it shifts from being a Brady issue into a Strickland, because he may not be convinced that the prosecutor didn't know. He's just generally saying, listen, if you found it now, your attorney could have found it then. So your issue is more ineffective, a Strickland issue, than it is a Brady violation, because we felt that, yes, it may have been prejudicial, maybe material, but you had access to it. So I haven't read it, but I'm just giving you the general assessment that happens on when they take a Brady claim and they elevate it into a Strickland. But if you can get the attorney on your side saying he messed up, right? Because I had my trial attorney, I didn't think he was going to do it, but he pretty much said, yo, I messed up. And me messing up compromised the defendant of an effective defense, right? So you want to have your attorneys try to reach out to your trial attorney to see if he give you an affidavit. If he doesn't give you an affidavit, you have to jump through some other hurdles, right? It makes it more harder, if I'm being honest with you. But you want to try to have a conversation with the trial attorney, ask him will he do the right thing if the courts are kind of leaning in to an ineffective claim more than a Brady violation.
That Strickland case law is about ineffective assistance. And I work in a law office where like 9 out of 10 times people are complaining about they got wrongfully convicted because their attorney just didn't do their job. And that's what Strickland sounds like, the attorney just not doing their job. So thank you for asking that question. And we'll definitely looking forward to learning some more. How do we keep our loved ones accountable? I heard, I think Hamza mentioned the word accountability earlier. How do we continue this conversation with our loved one that's behind the wall? What is our obligation to present an obligation to them? So I want to open this up to you guys. What are some ways that you hold your loved one accountable, or what are some ideas on how we can hold our loved ones accountable?
I think first, before you can hold your loved one accountable, we must hold ourselves accountable first. And once we're able to do that, then we're better to relay that to our loved one. So first, it starts with self first before we can expect it from them.
100%, Dominica. I totally agree with that. Advocating for Fuquan, before I got to that point, I had to hold myself accountable, and I'll be transparent. I wasn't doing the things I had to do. I was distracted, and I was smoking a whole lot of weed. And I had to stop that in order to focus, because I'm just the type of person that gets lazy and I get distracted and I'm using up my money and whatever, but I had to stop. I had to hold myself accountable and look in the mirror before I can try to hold him accountable or even focus on what he had to do. So thank you for that answer.
I think that in order to give someone behind the wall some type of hope and some type of light, they have to see that you believe in them just as much as they should believe in themselves. So a lot of people like not understanding the law, not understanding certain loopholes or certain things that your lawyer might have dropped or the DA withheld or police withheld or anything like that. Just the smallest inkling, the smallest thing can overturn your case, right? So I think a lot of times people look at their situation as a whole and feel as though they don't have a way out. So they kind of start drowning in their own mental and their own emotions. And then those who actually experience a lot of trauma prior to incarceration, and they were always disappointed. It was something in the street. Everybody feel like, I'm in the street, this is how I'm going to die, I'm going to jail. So it's a mentality that they're already doomed from birth. So coming into someone's life and you're showing up in a different way that they've never seen before kind of gives them a little bit of support, and they're able to kind of see what you see as long as you stay consistent.
Thank you for that. You on point.
100%. So the accountability and the work starts within on both sides of that phone, on both sides of the wall. We both have to be doing the work in order to be able to move forward to freedom. And that's the Harriet mentality. She got rid of all her distractions, everyone that tried to hold her back and told her it wouldn't work. She held herself accountable, followed through, and came back time and time again. Thank you, everybody. We never have enough time because there's always a lot to build on. We appreciate you guys for joining us. I just dropped a flyer in the chat. We have an event coming up next Thursday at Northeastern for those of you guys that can make it in person. It's from 3 to 5. If you can't make it in person, there is a Zoom option. And this is going to be our second HTP event in the community, our very first one in Boston and our very first one with Fu Home, where he will be facilitating and doing what he does behind the wall on that stage. So we encourage you to come. We encourage you to participate, whether it's virtual or in person, and we encourage you to share with others. A few more announcements. Fu does have a court hearing Monday, 9 a.m. This is to hopefully exonerate him because the case isn't over. He's out, but still fighting. So if you can make that, I'll put out a flyer with the details. And this weekend, for those of you that are local, there is an event at the Dudley Library, the Willie Lynch letter reading, How to Make a Slave. And I think that that's very relevant to what we're working on because we're working on getting people out. We hope to see you guys next week where Fu's going to do part 2 of the blueprint to get out of prison. And this is more legal next week. Today was just the mentality because you got to get your mind right before you can focus on anything else.
So what we can expect is just technical things explained simply, because a lot of us avoid the law because it's complex. It sounds like another language. So I'm gonna do my best to kind of break everything down simple.
And on that note, and let me start from the top. I always want to shout out the brothers. I need to update some of these pictures. Shout out to Ray. He's on with us right now. These are the brothers that are home. Hamza, I got to update your picture. We cannot use this picture anymore. You're free. Fu, same thing for you. You deserve a freedom picture. But we always want to salute and remember the people that we're working hard for. Ray Cologne, thank you for joining the Zoom today. It was nice to hear your voice. Asian T. The event that we have on Thursday, Johnson's artwork is going to be displayed throughout the room, so come and check it out. Joanna and Amos, Dawn, they'll be doing poetry live. That'll be exciting. Twiz, thank you for joining, and Jen for supporting Twiz. We fighting for all of y'all. It doesn't stop. Joint venture. Everybody that's still behind the wall, there's a lot more work to do. We don't forget about you guys. We're here to give back just like Harriet did. On that note, good night, everybody.